Williams. We will start with Dr. Yante Ronson giving us an opening address, just setting the context for the next hour or so that we will spend together. And Dr. Yante will introduce Baba, who will do the blessing after. So without further ado, can I ask Dr. Yante to speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne, and thank you everyone for giving up your Saturday, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, to share this time with us. It's a safe space. It's a space where emotions can rise, but as Clancy said earlier, we are amongst brothers and sisters. So why are we here? Lovely, glorious Saturday here. So in the early days of the pandemic, we were hearing about the disproportionate impact on the numbers of Black, Asian, and minoritized people, or as some people would say, people of color, who were losing their lives to COVID. And it seems as though now everyone knows someone who has succumbed to the virus. In our Ubele community, family, team, we have one member of staff who lost 4 members of their family. I myself was recently bereaved. I lost a very, very dear friend of mine whose funeral was last week. So everyone's going through some sort of grief or loss. And quarantine happened, and that means that we have no opportunities to grieve communally in the way that we used to. We can't come together to celebrate the lives of our loved ones, to offer condolences to family, to share memories, stories, attend funerals, wakes, have memorials, rituals. We just really can't grieve properly. And it's because of what was happening in the community, BAMEStream was born. And BAMEStream, for some of you may not know, is an alliance which was led by Helen George, Patrick Vernon, and myself. And we are a collective of practitioners. We've got therapists, policy experts, activists, academics who specialize in mental health, including bereavement. And the core purpose is really to raise awareness of the way mental health and wellness impacts people from our community, and the way that we grieve and express our feelings differently in some communities. So one of the first things we did was to do a survey here across England to find out what services are there around mental health, and particularly the impact of COVID-19 on our community. And the findings from that report, I can share it in the link, were shocking, really. Inadequate services. A lot of the mainstream services were not even addressing the fact that Black, Asian, and minoritized communities need culturally specific interventions. Additionally, what we found is the commissioning groups, so those who fund small organizations, they were not really addressing the fact that our communities are less likely to access funding. So we did the report, and out of that, we decided, okay, so what can we do to plug some of the gaps? And one of the things we know is that bereavement was not really considered a thing in terms of mental health and wellness. So at the minute, BAMEStream offers 3 free sessions for anyone who's struggling with grief or loss due to COVID. And that's done through an organization called NAVSIAD, and they offer interventions in 20 different languages. So we are trying our best to cover the community. Additionally, we've had other conversations, some of you were on it. We've had webinars, and a couple of weeks ago, we had a grief cafe, which was done by the Black and Asian Counseling Psychologist Group at Sydney. And it was really, really good. We will be soon doing some additional grief cafes. We'll be doing some podcasts. And just last week, we heard that we were successful in getting funding to do work with young people. So the idea is that young people will co-create age-appropriate support. So we will work with them to create the support that they think they need, relevant to their age. One other thing I wanted to mention is that Patrick Vernon, who's part of BAMEStream, he launched what is called the Majonzi Fund, Majonzi Swahili for Grief and Sorrow. And the funds, it's on GoFundMe, and the funds from that will be used to give families and groups small grants so they can have memorials and tributes to their loved ones, because we know it didn't happen. It hasn't been happening. So once lockdown has been lifted, the idea is people can apply and the fund will go live on the 23rd of March, which here is being designated National Day of Reflection by the Marie Curie Trust. So on that day, Majonzi will be launching the fund, and there will be an application process where families and groups can just apply to do something to celebrate their loved ones. And also there'll be a memorial wall where people can actually post up messages, pictures of their loved ones. So that's BAMEStream in a nutshell. Grief, loss, and bereavement isn't one size fits all. You know, we know this. We also know mental health services isn't one size fits all. It has to be culturally appropriate. There are gaps. Here's the space. Let's talk, because I think it's important that we share our experiences. Some will be quite emotional and touching, but there's value in it. But I just want to say it's a safe space. But if anyone needs some support, whether yourself or you know of anyone, please, BAMEStream.org, www.BAMEStream.org. There's 3 free sessions of support. There's additional support that can be done. We're not alone in this. Thank you so much. What I want to do now is to introduce Baba to do the blessing.
All right, greetings, everyone. I'm Baba Ifa Muagun. I'm a high priest in the Ifa tradition, which is a Yoruba tradition. You know, I'm also known as a Babalawo. That's still we call it, the high priest. You know, and I'm humbled and grateful to be in this space. And I thank Dr. Ralston for inviting me to share this sacred virtual space with you all. So I just want you to know that. So first of all, we want to give honor to the Most High by whatever sobriquet you may know the Most High as or by. And we want to give honor to our ancestors, you know, our maternal, paternal, and collective community ancestors as well. When it comes to the libations, we want to pour libations for the world community that has been impacted by the COVID-19. All right. We want to pour libation for those that have been victims of COVID-19. We pour libation and pray that sorrow, depression, death, sickness, loss, and grief will be no more. We pray for the disenfranchised and the impoverished. We pray and we pour libation for those that are sick and shut in, and thereby relegated to solitude. As you know, that all impacts, it feeds into this whole situation. We pour libation for a productive dialogue and exchange of ideas today and in the future. We pour libation so that those in this space can understand and be understood, listen and be heard, love and be loved, teach and be taught. Ashe. But finally, I just want to say one thing, that we have to remember that today is a gift. Yesterday was history and tomorrow is a mystery. So let us cherish the gift, effect change on the course of history, and shed light on the mystery. Ashe, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Baba. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to invite Daniel Sang from Myanmar, as it's latest there. It's nighttime. Daniel, please, welcome.
Thank you. And yes, I'm Daniel Sang from Burma, which is now called as Myanmar, a country which was caught by a coup by military junta 2 weeks ago. Of course, I run a language school, which is one of the biggest language school now here in Myanmar, with over 100 plus staff, with over 12,000 students annually. Of course, my business was really affected during this time. Well, I was able to make changes to do it well, of course, which I will be sharing after a while. And of course, you know, at the same time, I also mentor some of the SME, you know, owners here, that I understand the pain and the grief we all have been going through during COVID, and of course much more, especially during this time when the military junta coup the country 2 weeks ago. Maybe I will use a PowerPoint slide. Is it okay? I will go through 10 minutes maximum. And then after that, you may ask me more questions, to share. Okay. Let me do the screen sharing.
Are you been made co-host?
Pardon?
Has Daniel been made co-host, Yancy?
Yeah, 1 sec.
Yeah, here, host disable, attend this screen sharing. So will you mind allowing to do that?
I think Nicole is doing it.
Yeah.
Is it done?
No, I can't. Yeah.
Guess what?
Yeah, there you go. It's done, Daniel.
Oh,
Thank
okay,
you.
now you focus now. Okay.
Could I just say, anyone who's not speaking, could you please mute yourselves? Thank you.
Yes, can you see my PowerPoint? How is it?
Yes, thank you. We can see. I can see.
So for the next 10 minutes, I will divide, 4 subtopics so that you can see, how the people, go through this COVID painfully. Okay. So the first one I will briefly talk about before COVID. What was our country situation like before COVID? And during COVID, we have got the first wave and second wave. What happened during that time? And then after that, I will talk briefly about the military coup. Okay, of course, our country, I think most of you may know or might not know, it is in Southeast Asia. We have got about 55 million people there. We share, the borders with 5 countries: Bangladesh, India, China, Laos, and Thailand. And of course, it's the largest country on the Indochina Peninsula. And before COVID, what was it? Our country was under military government, junta, for about 60 years. Since we got the independence in 1947, since then they had been ruling that. During that time, it was a closed country, no internet, no phone lines. Phone lines were very rare. I think during even to early 2000, one SIM card costed about $4,000. After that, it went down to about $2,000. Then after that, $1,500. After that, $800. After that, $200. And now it is $1. Okay. Then, of course, during that time, during the military junta, the jobs were rare. Because of that, a lot of people leave the country, of course, which the military government wanted. And educated people were not given, or maybe even higher, in the companies or, even in the governments, because companies, most of them are run by the government. Life was hard, So during that time, we would be hearing stories like, oh, don't go to school, no need to school, because even if you hold degrees, see, a person who just, work with the government, they get, more earning. So see, education wasn't valued that time. So it was our country's situation during that time. And then democratic transition happened in 2010. I would say the first, democratic transition ever, 2010 to 2015. There were massive changes. That democratic transition was done by the same military junta, they were in power. Anyway, they did good, because a lot of, companies from international, come to Myanmar, manufacturing companies and all those. Because of that, Myanmar people begin to have job opportunities. Changes of lifestyle were seen, internet, jobs, And then after that, 2015, 2020, you may know the lady, Aung San Suu Kyi. She finally got the position there. And of course, since then, we could see more constructive and sustainable changes. That means people begin to enjoy good earning in companies, good spending power. So restaurants, more shopping malls, and lifestyle changes were seen a lot. Even during that time from 2017 to 2020, my business go very, very, very well. Those changes, but by 2020, what happened? By 2020, the first wave of COVID hit our country. It was somewhere by February, we could heard, cases are being seen in other countries, but still we thought we would still survive. But by that week of March, government announced all schools must be closed. That time we were just quite surprised. We have never heard that virus. We have never heard that those businesses would be closed. So people, we have to stay in a home quarantine. Then the first case was found only on 23rd March. And then I would say the first wave, March to August, 15 August, about 5 months, the cases were only 369. Total death, we saw only about 6 people die. Then after that, for about 3 to 4 weeks, no cases were found. So initially, when the first case, he came back from US, and he came back from US to get married here in Myanmar. He was the one. Then that time, lots of social discrimination, cursing him, why you would bring virus to country and all those. Then one those, with his, because he traveled from Yangon to Mandalay to Kalay, Chin State, western part of Myanmar. So where he stayed in hotel, he it seemed like, he spread all the, those virus. So people, those who got the virus, they were socially discriminated, like, they would be, video recorded, spread, share, all those. But later, as the, cases went on, they realized that no, it is something that, we need to help, cheer one another. Then the public, of course, our national leader, Daw Aung San Suu Kyi did quite well. The private sector, businessmen, they donated lots of money, and quarantine centers were free. Then we have got people coming back from Malaysia, coming back from Thailand, coming back from India. They brought a lot of cases, but they were, well supported by community. So it seems like we are quite happy. At the same time, we begin to see, lots of businesses close down. Yeah, these are some of the pictures, So during that time, we never realized that, we would be wearing masks even till today, but all the private and public sector work together to remind people and all those. So we did very good job. But at the same time, school and businesses, public schools were closed, university were closed. Actually, university, they were on the, I think they were on exam, just 3 more subjects to finish, but they were asked to, stop doing those. Then private international schools, lots of jobs, especially garment factories, because they cannot buy raw materials from China, Thailand, those don't come, so they cannot function. Then restaurants, they have to close down. Then manufacturing businesses, hotel, tourism sector. My friend, some of my friends run the tourist, company. They have, they don't have any, clients anymore. So they have to close down those. Of course, at the same time, there were some new businesses also emerged as well, online businesses, IT services, delivery services, all those. Of course, during that time, my school, we were able to make transition from, in-person classes to online, live teaching. We used Microsoft Teams to teach. At the same time, we also developed software where the students can, do all those. So, there were lots of losses, but at the same time, we saw lots of, businesses, small businesses coming up as well. And at the same time, we also heard, suicide cases, like near my home, there is a river. Almost every day, 1 or 2 dead body, found, people jumping there and all those. Then I think during the first wave, my uncle, a very dear uncle, who helped me to set up my school, he died as well. But no more than 25 people were allowed to gather. So it was very, very hard for us because especially ethnic group, when a person died, we spend at least 3 to 5 days mourning, we could not go to their home. We could not go to his funeral services as well. So people live with stress every day, but we still have hope in a sense. The positive cases, COVID positive cases went down. Then what happened again was it went down for about 2-3 weeks. So we were very, very happy. My school, we were able to run for about 5 weeks for in-person classes. We thought, now we would be running, our business will come back. So all were very motivated. But sadly, second wave happened here. Second wave happened. When the second wave happened, it was from the bank staff in Rakhine State, the western part of Myanmar. Then it started somewhere 20th August. Then 30 cases right away in a day. Then after that, hundreds. After that, 1,000. So the city from Rakhine State, they come back to Yangon. From Yangon, they go to different places. 1,000 and 1,000, and during the second
Oh, I hope we can get Daniel back soon. Oh. We've lost him completely, I think.
I think he's back now.
Is he back?
Yeah.
Hello?
Right, you're back.
Oh, have I been talking without the turning on the...
Just, no, you were doing it well. The presentation was fine. We lost you just a few seconds ago.
Okay. So I'm going to finish just 3 or 4 minutes. Is it okay?
Yeah, that's fine. 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay. Okay. So the second when the second wave happened, we could no longer, stand. And people, then we have an election there in November. Then I think it was intentional, then more businesses closed down. Just last week, first week of January, the market leader, Shangri-La Hotel, I think Mom Yvonne, you might know it, Shangri-La Hotel in downtown. They announced that they would be closed for 9 months, along with over 1,000 hotels. People, over 50,000 people lost jobs right away within a month. Then manufacturing, more manufacturings, garment manufacturing companies, the owners run away because they cannot pay. So a lot of chaos began to happen, especially by the second wave. And then more crimes we began to see. But at the same time, we still live with hope, that we would be businesses would be able to start by the end of January or February or March. But what happened was military coup happened on the 1st of February. We woke up on the day it was announced that military took over. Then what happened was they began to arrest people at night, crack down the demonstration. Telephone were cut off. The worst was internet. Like my business, our school has been going on. I still have over 1,000 students running over 100 classes online. One internet was cut off, boom, everything stopped. Not only my business, but online services, manufacturing company, like example, Suzuki, from Japan, and a lot of companies. We were very angry. I am still, in anger, resentment. How could they have done? See, before COVID, our country was still very young with democratic transition,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Just 10 years old. People begin to test, the what do we call it? The test of democratic, values. Where if you work hard, you will have space. You know, because during military time, if you know somebody in the company, or then you will get job. No need degree, you know. But now our young people, yeah, if we work hard more, you know, educated people will value, because international company begin to hire them. They begin to, you know, earn more money. They begin to see more opportunities. So, you know, the thrive, you know, it is about to, you know, go up and up. Then suddenly in one day, everything was just crushed. So even since last week, no banks open, all the banks closed. Then ATM money ran out. Right now, this is our, you know, potential investors. They don't come anymore. Then a lot of our international big companies, they begin to leave. Like Kiran, one of the biggest, you know, beverages company, just said they are leaving. Then Suzuki might be leaving soon. See, thousands of like jobs will be lost again. So right now, yeah, this is what we do. I think, do you see this picture? The lady banging the pot? We do every night at 8 p.m. Just 30 minutes ago, I went and banged the pot, expressing our anger and resentment that, you know, we reject the military coup. People, thousands and thousands of people here every day on the streets right now, every day. Then every night we watch security. I am, you know, I wear many hats. Daytime we march. Nighttime we guard our community. Why? Just on February 12, this military junta released over 23,000 prisoners. They drug them. Then they ask them to set fire in different places. Then we are issue curfew after 8 p.m. We cannot go out. Then by 9 or 10, those people, 10 or 7 or 15, they go to different community and try to set fire. So we are guarding our community from, see, this is what we are living. So see, as I said a while ago, you know, our country was over 50 years under military government, lots of, you know, things, new hope, 10 years, now within a day, just everything crashed out. So the pain, the grief had been so big at this very big time. Thank you. So you can ask me more questions after a while.
Yeah, thank you, Danielle. I met Danielle when I went to work in Myanmar as a business consultant, and Danielle was one of my students. Although, as you can see, Daniel is a very smart man. I'm really impressed with how large your school has grown. But I always knew you'd excel. And
you train me, right?
Oh, bless you. And it was a very exciting time when I was working there, because, you know, as Daniel said, there was a time of change. It was the first place I'd been in the world to work, and nearly every single car on the road was brand new. There were 24-hour construction projects, putting up all these new car companies, Jaguar, Nissan, all are just huge marble structure, gorgeous things. It was a really vibrant place. And so it's very disappointing to hear what's happened. And on top of COVID, this is why this event Yancy has put together is so important, because who would have thought that people could be, one, going through COVID and then having to experience this on top? It's unimaginable. And it's a place I've been to. I was invited back again and a second time to work again, developing some other well, younger than me, but they're mature people married with family, you know, around social entrepreneurship. And the second time I went, I traveled the length and breadth of Myanmar, going to Mandalay and different places, delivering for small businesses and NGOs. So for me, it's an absolute shock. And Daniel, I'm deeply sorry to know that the nation is going through this at this time. It's so compounded. Daniel's going to stay with us for a while. And so we'll go through a few more guests, and then we'll probably have a period of asking questions, and then we're going to have some drumming, a break where we'll have some drumming, and then Yanti will then introduce some speakers. So Akira, would you like to speak next?
Sure, thank you. Thank you again for inviting me to the space. Thank you, Dr. Ralston, for reaching out to me. Hi, everyone. My name is Akira, Akira Peterkin. I am located in the U.S., so a little, chaotic here at times. Specifically, I'm located in Connecticut, and I go between Connecticut and New York very often. I work in New York, and I live in Connecticut. And so to me, I think this is very important to have this global conversation, because in my heart, I feel we're all global citizens, right? We're not just a part of one country, we're all connected. And one thing that COVID has taught us is that, what happens in one country impacts the other countries, right? So I think this is very humbling to be in this experience, and also a very a heartbreaking time that we're all going through it as well. So in the US, I am a clinical social worker, also known as a therapist. I work at a college in New York, so that's what I do in New York. And I actually, in response to COVID, I opened up a private practice. So my private practice is, I think at the beginning of COVID, before the Black and brown deaths was coming to the media, right? I had a feeling it was going to impact our communities the most, just because of the systemic racism that tends to happen in our country. And so I felt called to do something for my communities. So I opened up a private practice in the tri-state area, so New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey, which were also the hotspots of COVID at that time. And so my private practice specifically works with underrepresented communities, such as the Black and brown, Indigenous communities, as well as the trans, queer communities as well. So I felt like those communities were suffering, and kind of like Dr. Ralston said before, we don't really get services, and we're underserved in America, and also what sounds like globally too. And so I opened up that practice, and what I'm finding in my work is grief looks like so much. Grief we usually think of when it comes to loss and death, right? But grief during COVID looks like various different ways, and is very layered. So right now, the US has I think it's almost 500,000 deaths at this time. I think it's specifically 496 and a couple hundreds of deaths, right? And so when we think of that statistically, it just looks like a big number. But that means over 500,000 people are grieving their loved ones. Over 500,000 people are grieving their family members, right? Trying to figure out how to maneuver life without them. And so that's a huge population that's impacted. And so it's not just a statistic that we see on the news, those are people that are actually suffering as well. On top of that grief and loss, though, in regards to death, we're seeing thousands and hundreds of people losing their jobs every day. And with that, being that we live in America, which is a capitalistic society, which I have my own thoughts about that, we see a lot of people attach their identities to their jobs, right? So here are people who had their jobs, and then all of a sudden they feel like they're worthless, because in our society, if you don't have a job and you're living in poverty, you're seen to be blamed for your experience, instead of seeing it as, the system has failed you. And so you're seeing people grieving the loss of their identities, which is very heartbreaking in itself, because we know as human beings, we have more value than just the work that we do. So not just individuals are losing their jobs and losing their identities, we're also seeing individuals losing their jobs, losing their homes, trying to figure out how to eat, trying to figure out how to get shelter over their heads. And that specifically hits the Black, brown, queer, immigrant populations more than it hits, the people who have money in their pocket, and specifically the white population, right? So it is kind of heartbreaking to see this disproportionate rate that's happening across the US. I'm also, I know the US have for the last 4 years have been on the global scale. And I mean, it wasn't helpful that we had a leader who was often triggering people every day, right? And so what you saw, everyone tuned in to see the Black Lives Matter protest, which was interesting for me because what I saw as a clinician was that my business boomed, right? So the death of George Floyd happened, and all of a sudden I was at capacity in a couple of days, where a lot of Black people were reaching out for help. And for me, it was heartbreaking. I made this practice specifically because I knew there was a need out there, but every day I'm realizing more and more there's not enough help out there for our communities. And so we were protesting and marching in the streets, and that in itself was, it was a grieving process for the Black and Brown community, but a lot of people already know. Unfortunately, in the US, Black people are constantly dying by the hands of police brutality and, and these vigilantes. So it wasn't new for the Black community, but apparently it was new for the white community to tune in. And so that was the difference there, that we were now grieving in a global way. Whereas unfortunately before we were grieving in a private way, right? And so we had to go to work every day knowing that another Black sibling passed away by the unjust hands of police brutality, or a white person just wanted to murder them. And so that was different for us to now be looked at and seen, which was important, but at the same time it didn't really give the space that we needed to grieve the losses more privately in some ways for some people. There also has been, I work at the college, so you also see students are grieving every day. They're grieving college and their college experiences, their school experiences that they used to have. But specifically for the college students, a lot of our college students, especially the underrepresented students, they use college as a way to escape home. And so their home sometimes is a toxic space for them. And so the college has provided them shelter, 9 months out of the year. And so all of a sudden they're not able to come into the school because because of COVID. And so they're at home stuck with their family members who may be abusing them, right? And on top of that, whether they're experiencing abuse or not, they're also experiencing trying to balance the responsibilities. So if you have someone who is now at home, they're trying to take care of their siblings for their loved ones, right? Because their parents are working multiple jobs. They're also trying to go to work themselves, right? And so you're finding that at the college setting, students are kind of mentally checking out. They're going on Zoom classes all day, and then their social experiences are dwindling because they don't want to virtually chat after being in classes all day. So you're seeing people just mentally checking out, and burnout is very high too. So grief looks compounded in many different ways. And I think Daniel also spoke to the fact that funerals are not the same anymore. So people are dying and people are unable to grieve and go, see their loved ones and kind of close that chapter in some sense. It's very different. And also, I don't know if this is unique to the US because we tend to be a hot mess politically. We saw when it came to precautions, it became a political thing, whether or not you wore a mask, which I think was very absurd. And so you find people are losing family and friends because of where they stand politically when it comes to the mask wearing, right? And so it was actually interesting for me to travel in the summer. My partner is white, and her family was going to Tennessee. I don't know if anyone knows anything about Tennessee, but I'm from the North, right? And Tennessee is the South, and it tends to have racism is more overt in the South. And so we were traveling down to the South, and you saw when New York and Connecticut we follow the precautions very strictly. We're Democratic states, blue states. We go down south, police officers in my face talking with no mask on, right? Crowds of people just mingling on the streets. It kind of looked like Times Square with no mask on. And so that was pretty unsettling for me, where people were just spewing their germs all over, not caring. But to them, like, it was their rights, whether or not they wore a mask. And so you saw people not really concerned about the livelihoods of strangers or loved ones. They were more concerned about their comfort of not wearing a mask because it was inconvenient for them. And so in the private practice, I'm having people making grand decisions of whether or not that's friends they want to hold on to, because they're saying, you know, if this person doesn't care about the livelihood of others, how can I trust them to consider my life and my safety, right? And so people are deciding to end friendships because at the end of the day, they're having differences in regards to that. And the last thing I would also share is I've seen people, you know, die and grieving. So I've had friends who've lost family members. I've had clients who've lost loved ones. But specifically, my best friend is a nurse in the ICU. And she works in New York, right? And so New York was the center of COVID at the beginning of the COVID. And so my best friend is not the type to really ask for help. But during that time, she was put on the COVID unit in the ICU. And she all of a sudden started experiencing a lot of panic attacks, vomiting before work. She couldn't go in. And so I referred her to get some free therapy. At the time, there's this trauma network that I referred her to that was given free therapy for healthcare workers. So she has been going to therapy every day since, but she's saying she's seeing people my age, I'm 29, dying in front of her. And it is heartbreaking for her to walk into the unit every day. And she's kind of hit her tolerance of, she no longer can tolerate people just complaining but nothing, because she's seeing every day family members are losing stuff. She was also talking about the stressors nurses are under with, at the time, no PPEs, right? And so back then she was saying a lot of people were dying, not because of COVID, but because nurses are so stressed out and they're making silly mistakes. And because of that, you're seeing more and more losses. And so that is something to think about regarding, like, you know, the people who needs the support to help take care of other people and keep them alive are not getting the resources. But thankfully, we do have a new administration. And to be honest, my partner said to me the other day, she's like, I don't know if you noticed this, but I feel like you have been less stressed since Biden has been in office. I don't know if that's just, you know, irony or what, but, you know, I feel less stressed. And so it is a little bit more where we can kind of put our hands in the government to try to actually do their jobs. We'll see what happens with the change, but you definitely do feel like at the end of the day, the government's going to do what they have to do to keep us safe. So that's a little bit that I'm going to share about the US. There's obviously a lot more that's happening in the US, but I'm gonna end my sharing at here. But thank you again for inviting me to this space.
Thank you very much, Akira. That was very interesting. I've been working with clients and heard about the situation regarding young people being at home and even their privacy being violated in their homes and all sorts. Much synergy with what you said, as people have commented in the chat. And the mask wearing is also huge here. Some people don't even think that COVID exists, and some people, like you say, are not wearing masks because it's an inconvenience and they don't think it's necessary. We'll if you're with us, I know you said you needed to leave early, but if you're with us, we'll come back. Obviously, if people want to ask questions, we're going to move swiftly on to Christopher, who's in the room. Christopher, I saw you earlier.
I'm right here. You probably have a lot of faces to look at, so you can hear my voice. So first of all, I want to just thank David and Akira. You know, you are such a blessing, and your sharing has really been inspirational. So there's so much hope, even in the pain and the grief and the loss that you talk about. I just feel that hope. I'm going to share very much something similar, but hopefully it will also give people a good understanding of the impact and very much how we've experienced grief and loss in Uganda. So Uganda is in East Africa. We are a small, old country. So, you know, we've been around for a long time, and we've had some great kings and some great people. And actually, may I just acknowledge that it's so great to be here with the global majority, you know, family. So it's just amazing. So I'm so happy to be here. And thank you, Yancy, again, Dr. Yancy, for inviting me. So I run a small charity with a very big impact. And by small, we have I know this might sound quite a bit, but we have £1 million budget a year. But we work with over 30,000 families in about 4 regions in Uganda. Our charity was founded to demonstrate that children do not have to spend a night, a day, or ever in their life grow up in an orphanage. We were founded to strengthen families so that they don't have to be separated from their children. We were founded to ensure that children who are not necessarily orphaned but living in orphanages can go back and live with their kin, their aunties, their uncles, their grandparents. We've seen this across the world. We were founded to ensure that communities respond to the needs of families and not external people coming in. So I completely believe in decolonizing this, you know, aid in communities and ensuring we give the power back to the people and the communities. And we've certainly seen that throughout the pandemic. So for us, there was real hope in demonstrating that our model that actually goes into communities, skills up and trains a neighbor of a neighbor into a village health response person, a midwife, a counselor, a supporter. Those neighbors, like Akira in her neighborhood, those neighbors, they know their people and they serve their people best. So whilst all of us had to stay indoors, those communities actually responded. Folks, one of the first things that happened, I was in Uganda in March when we identified our first case and the government locked us down, was all the aid agencies got onto planes and left the country. You know, people headed back to where they came from. Rightly so. They were fearful, they were scared, they didn't know what was going on, but what they left behind was a really difficult situation. So I recorded some notes and I'll go through them really quickly to share with you. The most up-to-date records, and for those of us who look at these records and, well, I don't know, make something of them, our death toll in Uganda is still very low. It's 331, but I want to just recognize what Akira said. That's, you know, that's over 331 people experiencing grief and loss. And that in my book is still a lot of folks. Since our first case was reported in March 2020, we've recorded just over 14,000 recoveries. And again, those are the recoveries that we know of, that we record. People who have either gone to hospital and have come into the data. Again, how many people in rural Uganda have been recorded, have been talked about? So there are far more deaths recorded in the urban area. So you can see the disparity. And that's because those are the numbers that will go to the hospital. So in the rural areas where we do a lot of our work, in March, and when I was also there in December, we visited lots of communities where there were people who had been in, you know, who had COVID but hadn't gone to hospitals, and those weren't recorded numbers. Deaths are mostly occurring in our population over 65. And quite recently, we lost a number of our wise age group, so our wisdom age group. So the transition for us is going to be very difficult. My mom is 83, and she's lost 5 friends, really close people that we knew, so not biological family members. But I'm really sad to report, and you know, when Dr. Yancy asked me to talk about this, I said to my wife, I don't know how to speak about this. I know many people have experienced this, but I had a call yesterday, and my uncle died just yesterday of COVID, just out of the blue, in hospital. So really personal for me as well, and really personal for those around us. In Uganda, however, we've also had a 35 to 55 wave of health-related deaths, kind of related to underlying issues. which really shocked a lot of us, but you know, it's real and it can affect a lot. Most reports show that Uganda dealt with this response to COVID initially very well. But folks, I just want to tell you that what we saw as dealing really well was an incumbent government weaponizing COVID-19 to stop the political others from stepping up and advocating for the rights of the people. So there was a massive donate campaign. So just like, you know, David spoke, there was this national campaign, you know, everybody from the wealthiest to some folks that really earn almost, you know, £1 a day were coming and donating to this national approach of government giving, but not a single penny, not a single shilling has been seen in the fight against COVID. But we have seen tanks on the road, military on the road. There was a severe political unrest in November where 37 to 45 people were shot. Some of you might have seen videos of the police kind of just shooting randomly at people as they kind of run on the streets. So there was real political unrest, none that we have seen in any kind of a year before campaign in Uganda. Now, look, this is nothing compared to what's happening in many other countries, but it was equally terrible for us to experience this, because not only did we have COVID-19, we had weaponized COVID-19 as well. We had containment measures and lockdowns that suited the government so that the president could come onto television and campaign, whilst other political parties were not allowed to have the same kind of platform to speak about the difference. We had hospitals closed, folks. So treatable diseases like malaria, diarrhea, people could not access clinics, people could not access hospitals for that kind of thing, because you had to go to the main bigger hospitals. And the people prioritized at the main big hospitals were the people who could afford to pay to go there. In Uganda, healthcare is free. You get seen by a doctor and you don't have to pay for it. You pay for some of the medicine. But when the local clinics and the local hospitals are closed and you have to go to the main hospitals and pay for it, that's a long trek for you. So you're going to give up. So we saw lots of deaths for treatable diseases. You know, lots of children in our care, in our service, were dying from epilepsy that had been treated for years, malaria, diarrhea, very early on. So we identified our first case in March, but quite in June, a child on our caseload died, which kind of left our team, you know, just completely at a loss of how to deal with everything. We are social workers. I'm a psychotherapist. My team is a team of social workers. They see this, they know what poverty is, but experiencing a death that could have been avoided, prevented, stopped, dealt with, was really difficult for our team to get over. So I've talked about unequal targeting of COVID-19. Over 8 million Ugandans, and that's 19.7%, live below the national poverty line. However, our government response to COVID and the relief programs like the food, medicine, relief aid have been directed primarily to 1.5 million people living in the urban areas. So similarly, the government's response measures are also focused on the formal sector. For those of you who know countries like ours, low and middle income countries, we thrive on the informal sector. You know, you have women and men who sell food on the streets, women and men who sell clothes and watches and secondhand things. That sector completely wiped out, completely gone, completely refused to do anything. So the dignity that Akira talks about, I understand and I see. And sadly, this is likely to cause further inequality between the rural and the urban population, and obviously cause a heightened risk around poverty and vulnerability. I've talked about the disruption of the services to health folks. It's real, it's still ongoing. So even now, some clinics have started to open, but aren't operating at the level that the major and the bigger hospitals and clinics are. And one of those reasons is we don't have enough medication coming into the country to deal with all the other things. The medication that's being prioritized is to treat COVID patients, but treat those COVID patients who can afford to pay for it. There's an increased occurrence of deaths, I've told you that, from preventable diseases like malaria, and access to things like family planning and other healthcare programs have also been compromised. Loss of employment. We saw lots of families that had finally come out of a poverty situation, had finally made it. Families we'd supported with employment to set up their own businesses. All those businesses lost. But equally, there was hope in some of the community groups we've set up, the village savings and loan schemes, where many men and mostly women had started to save, were able to pull some of that money out and use it and haven't lost all their income. And so what we're doing instead is investing into those village savings and loan schemes so that they can go beyond the pandemic. So there's still some hope. And, despite us never knowing that this was coming, I am so glad we worked to strengthen communities. A number of orphanages sent their children home, just kind of sent them back. Again, I keep saying 90% of children in orphanages aren't orphans. They've got families they can go back to. These kids were sent home. So we had to quickly respond to that. Situations where there's violence, where there's other multiple relationships and just distable. So we had to kind of intervene and support those families as well, and ensure that those children were properly transitioned. We worked with over 300 kids that have been randomly sent home to support them to either move into foster care or to kinship care where they'd be more stable. Loss of family members, not just from COVID, but other diseases, including cancer, HIV, loss of freedom. I've talked about the political unrest, loss of education, and the fear for so many girls that they will not be able to go back to school after the pandemic. I spoke to a couple of community members who said to me, the girls are maturing, meaning that they have come into puberty, which means that admitting them back into primary school will not be acceptable because they look too old to be there. And also for some family members, the prioritizing of girls is just not a thing for them. They won't be paying for their girls to go back to school. So once again, our program is doing a lot around education and supporting girls to access schools. Folks, you should know that in Uganda still, schools are not open. However, foreign funded schools and all the other schools that foreigners come to are open and their kids are going to school. So a real loss of education, an alarming rise in reports of violence against women and girls. In our program, we had a 30% increase in domestic abuse related cases, children harmed, little girls and little boys who tried to steal food or find food from gardens, beaten severely. We had to remove from those families and place somewhere else and support with medical care. And we responded to 4 of the most difficult child-headed family situations that I've ever experienced in my own career. So the situation was a little girl, 6-year-old girl, looking after her 1-year-old brother and her father, who were HIV positive and had no access to ARVs. So we had to intervene into that, get dad and this little boy to hospital, move this little girl to her grandmother. Good news is they're now back at home and everyone's being treated. But we had a number of child-headed family cases. And I speak about this normally because in Uganda, there's so many child-headed families. The situation is ridiculous that you have to support those child-headed families. But during COVID, there were situations where some of those families just could not look after themselves. And an example is this case I've given you, where you find a 6-year-old looking after her family. Personally, folks, COVID has, it has taken away so much. What we did, my wife and I, during this period is we wanted to have a voice again for the minoritized population in the United Kingdom. And I set up a small organization called 846.global with a group of friends, supporting those willing businesses that want to have very open conversations and change their governance around the process of, talking about the minoritized community and ensuring that they're not avoiding those conversations. So this wasn't just about inclusion. This is about exploring how people feel and how they've made decisions about those feelings. So recognizing that we exclude people intentionally, or we exclude people not just because of our policies, but because of the way we feel. But I see a lot of hope, and I still feel a lot of hope. As we speak, Uganda is open. There is no lockdown, there's no containment. What we have in Uganda now is a curfew that starts, that is 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Bars and restaurants are open, but like I said, medical services are not. So there's a real lack of prioritizing. And the rural communities are really, really struggling. We have started to plan for beyond the pandemic as an organization. So we are talking to donors about how we need to think about supporting people with employability, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Because as I said, most of these communities have started to do their own innovations. Some of the most amazing things we've seen are hand washing equipment that was designed and developed by people within their community. So we didn't have to bring things in from China or from Europe. These things could be created within those communities. So I have a real hope that our numbers will stay low and our communities will stay stronger, and that one day we will come beyond this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Christopher. Deepest condolences to you and your family for the loss. Also, Daniel lost an uncle. The avoidable deaths, that's so sad. And also sorry to hear about the military unrest and the unfair weaponizing of COVID for personal and political gain. These stories, harrowing. Can I now introduce Mrs. Sophia Boyd from Jamaica? Sophia, are you ready to speak? Please unmute yourself.
I am. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Not sure if all of you know, well, Jamaica is a popular Caribbean country. There's 2.9 million of us, and I think they said another million in the diaspora. So COVID and Jamaica. So when it first hit, the government was lauded for doing an excellent job. But a lot of people said, oh, you know, you can't grade an exam that you have not yet taken. So, you know, there was doubt in terms of what the government was actually doing in terms of, you know, getting everything ready, etc. The long and short of it, tourism, which is our main earner of foreign exchange, that suffered immensely because we know our main tourism markets are from North America, the UK, Canada, and that was heavily hit. And a lot of the country's business people at the time, because the spread was in the US, in the UK, in Canada, they were saying to protect Jamaica, so we had to close our borders. It started with the cruise ships as well, because I think we get about 10 cruise ships per day, if not more. And then that came to a dead halt because a lot of people were affected, and they are a huge employer of Jamaican nationals as well. And a lot of Jamaican nationals were stuck at sea. So that was another drama within itself as well. And then coming back to the shores, then we realized that our infrastructure in schools for our children and education was severely affected because we had a lockdown, and in having the lockdown, the schools were closed, and then it showed up the disparity between the haves and the have-nots. So in terms of people from a lower socioeconomic background being able to access Wi-Fi and data for online learning, it threw it wide open. So then persons started clamoring to say that the schools should reopen, but there's always this fear of the spread, because from the Christmas holidays and up until now, there has been a sharp rise in the number of cases of COVID, we're looking at approximately 200 per day.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's a sharp rise. There is a sharp rise. I don't know what they're tying it to, because the Christmas period was very restricted. A new curfew has now been implemented, where the curfew is from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. But what you find is that the entertainment sector, because Jamaica is a very entertainment and tourist-driven country, and it's a very informal economy. So we're talking about, if we have what we call street sessions, you've got the jerk chicken man, you've got the Guinness man, you've got the soup lady, you've got the peanut man. So because of that, you find that communities from the lower socio-economic scale are severely affected by it. What happened, the government last year, they rolled out what they call a care program, where they gave a stipend to persons who were affected by the whole COVID lockdown. It was welcomed, and it was magnanimous for the government to do that under the circumstances, because Jamaica does not have like a social intervention program, so to speak, as per the UK, where you've got the DWP. We've just got what we call a PATH program, and that's for people who are living in abject poverty. And it's mainly to those families, and there's conditions in terms of how you get hold of the grants, etc. So the government then, seeing the issues that what affected particularly the learning of children, there is a tablet for schools program, but it was on hold because there were some logistics issues. Then it's now back on stream again. The diaspora, the UK, the US, Canada, Africa, all over, the government then did a drive and a concert in terms of like a telethon for persons to give money with, and it was partnered with the private sector organization of Jamaica. I'm not sure how much money they collected. I know when it first started, they gave some figures. I didn't commit it to memory, but we've not heard anything much more about it. And that's one of the things where persons are always clamoring for accountability, you know, and that's an issue, I think, in Africa and the Caribbean, where our people, we don't account for our resources, you know. So in terms of now, because there is such a spread, some of the sectors, particularly the health sector, they're calling to have a total lockdown. In all honesty, Jamaica can't afford to have a total lockdown because of the poverty that exists and because of how it will affect informal activities as it stands, as it is already, because the entertainment industry, the sporting industry, they are up in arms with the government at the moment because they have not had the opportunity to host, you know, their events, and that is severely affecting the economy as it stands. I know there's the growth that was projected by the government that has stalled somewhat. There are many issues. To be fair to the government, they are trying their best, but I'm not sure if their best is good enough in terms of how they're utilizing the resources. And that's one of the major issues that we have. It's this whole process of accountability. I work for a Christian-based organization We give out care packs every month. We have walk-ins every day. Persons just walk in off the road asking for a tin of mackerel, a pound of rice, some cornmeal, some milk powder, just to feed their families. And it is that dire. It is absolutely dire. A lot of persons have lost their jobs. They were laid off because we're reliant, very heavily reliant on the BPO sector. And there was a huge scare last year, and there was an outbreak that they had to close a couple of the BPOs because they weren't following the disaster risk management processes. Because the problem with Jamaica, one of the issues that we have is enforcement. So we have everything on document and in document, but enforcement is the issue. So because of that, you find that the companies, etc., tend to break the rules. And then it's when it gets to an epidemic proportion, then we realize, oh, this wasn't being done, that wasn't being done, etc. You know, and it is stretching our resources, because at the moment for one of our hospitals, you had, I think, 17 health practitioners that were off with COVID. So they are being severely affected. Kingston and St. Andrew has the largest amount of cases. In total, I think we've got 20,000 cases at the moment.
Okay.
Yes, so there's a huge spread. And then, as I said, because we are reliant on the tourist sector, and the tourists, so there's not a total shutdown, so tourists are still coming in. And I'm not saying this to say that it's the tourists that are bringing in the COVID, because there's no lockdown in terms of families coming in, and Jamaicans traveled back and forth, particularly from the US, from the UK, because I think in the initial spread, it was somebody from the UK that had brought in, and it wasn't a tourist, it was just an ordinary citizen that had brought in the original case. And it was like a super spreader, because the person went everywhere. And as a person coming home, you're coming home from the winter, you're gonna go everywhere. But I think the person was asymptomatic at the time, so they didn't realize that they actually had it. And it was then when the cases started to mushroom, then they realized, and they did the track and trace, then they realized just how much, you know. But can we do better? I think all of us on these panels will say, yes, our countries can do better. Do they have the will to do better? We don't know, because we're seeing the spike now. We are one of the few Caribbean countries that have not started the vaccination program as yet. I know Barbados has started, Guyana has started, Jamaica has not started yet. I'm not sure if we have that much goodwill anymore. So we're not very, you know, prominent as we were before. The government announced that they are cutting. So they had a marketing budget for 422 million. And because of public outcry, they've now decided that, okay, well, we're gonna scale back on the PR for persons to take the vaccine, because they realize that people will take the vaccine because they're seeing other countries take the vaccine. So I don't think there needs to be this grand PR thing about whether or not persons should take the vaccine, yes or no. You know, it should be a choice. As I've always said, if you do a campaign, you put the benefits, you put the pros and the cons. If you explain it in layman's terms for people to understand, especially in a country where the illiteracy rate is high, you know, we have to think of these things. And, you know, so the resources, we can't afford to be wasting them at the moment, you know, because it impacts everybody and everything. And poverty is very high in Jamaica. Even though we're deemed as a middle-class country, the poverty in Jamaica is huge. Education or lack of education is also huge as well. So, you know, these are the areas that the government of the day needs to be looking at in terms of empowering people and making their lives better. And
Thank
the
you,
whole
Sophia.
COVID,
Thank
you
you.
know, yeah, the whole
Thanks.
COVID thing has just shown up
Thank
what
you.
is going on. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Sophia. Yes, COVID has exacerbated inequalities across the board
Yeah.
in the UK as well, and I think it does that in many countries. Can I invite Veronica King from South Africa, and then after that, Tione Pascal, and then we're going to take a break. We're going to have some drumming during the break, and then Yancy will be introducing some other speakers. I can't believe we've already done 1 hour and 14 minutes. So whereas I don't want to curtail anybody, we need to be mindful that there are quite a few people who have not yet spoken, and so many people may not be able to stay on. So just think about what you want to say, and maybe we can be a bit more succinct in what we're saying. And Becky has asked what time we're finishing. We didn't set a finishing time because we didn't feel it was that kind of event. But I'm just being mindful of the time, how much time we've already spent, and the fact that there are still people who really want to speak and haven't spoken. So for the speakers that are coming up, to be mindful of that. Okay, so Veronica, and then after that Tione, and then we have a break. I think we all need a break after. So Veronica King from South Africa.
Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Dr. Yancy. It's a pleasure to be here, although my heart feels really heavy listening to all the stories already. And it's reminding me of the pain that we've been enduring, and me personally. I'm based in Johannesburg in South Africa. My professional work is that I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion facilitator, and an executive coach, and that's what my business focuses on. I'm also a traditional healer, and that is where I've been really busy supporting many families, my own families. I think in preparation for this session today, I'd kind of lost count of the number of people that I know who have passed away. And in the traditional healing community, there have been devastating stories of healers who live out in rural areas and in townships. And one of the most devastating stories was one of my traditional healer sisters who sadly had died out in a rural area, and her son couldn't get an undertaker to come and get her. So he had to wait with his mum, who had passed away, for a couple of days. So that's just to give you an indication of the number of stories with the chasm that we have here and the poverty. It's been absolutely, we've been ravaged by COVID. We've had up to 50,000 deaths. I don't think that's an accurate number at all. We've had 1.5 million cases, and there's been about 50,000 deaths. But as I say, that's obviously just the numbers from urban areas. I think people in townships and rural areas, Black people, haven't even been considered because they're not part of the census. And I think the idea where, from a traditional healing perspective, all the actual cultural appropriate rituals that haven't been possible. People have been dying in isolation. People haven't had funds to even hold memorial services to bid their loved ones farewell. So what I've started doing is every fortnight I've created an online communal space where people come in grief, because people, I think people that have attended the sessions that I host have expressed that they actually can't even cry anymore, but the grief is, they're having somatic experiences because of the grief and the trauma of what's happening. And that's not even speaking about the loss of jobs and how the chasm between the haves and the have-nots have even widened. So yeah, I just think that I just wanted to share, I think all the information that's been shared from the other speakers that have gone before me are very similar in South Africa. It's absolutely heartbreaking on a daily basis. And so from a place of Ubuntu and from a Sangoma traditional healing perspective, when somebody is lost, we all grieve. And that's why it feels insurmountable at times. There are times I feel numb and paralyzed because there's moments I can't even feel anymore. So I'm really honored to be here today. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you, Veronica. Thank you. 50,000 deaths. It's devastating. And as a healer, I feel your pain. I think we all share your pain, and we all share everyone's pain here today. It's horrific. And the disparities between the rich and the poor and how this thing is being played out across the world is becoming really apparent. Here in the UK, in the USA, everywhere in the world. If there's anything coming out of this today already, it's that, as we thought it might anyway. Tony Pascal, are you with us? Yes. I know you joined earlier. We look forward to hearing from Malawi now. I worked in Malawi, so I know Tony Pascal too.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Bit more volume, Tony. Can we have some volume from you?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to participate in this meeting.
Hiya, Tony.
We can't hear Yvonne.
Let me just maybe remove.
Perfect. There you go.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to interact with all of you. Malawi is not spared. It's one of the poorest countries in the world. We can't have a lockdown. So we are really helpless as a country. And COVID has affected us in a number of ways. We have businesses being closed down, and also the owners of the businesses not being able to pay off their staff. We have had food shortages, more especially those that have high vitamin C content, like oranges, lemons. The prices have just gone up. We have had problems in terms of transport costs because the government tried to regulate the number of passengers that can be carried in one vehicle, and then that has also contributed to the rise in transport costs. We have had a lot of misinformation. People are taking drugs without proper prescriptions. So even you go to some of the pharmacies, the prices of drugs have gone up, and people are stocking drugs, essential drugs, in their homes. So that has affected us, and also the supply of drugs is also, we are running short of it. Our hospitals are overwhelmed. We have had cases where people would go to the hospital, they need oxygen, but the hospitals cannot give the oxygen. We don't have enough cylinders, and also we don't have enough beds. So the government has turned one of the stadium into an isolation center where people are now being treated, but that's not enough. So we have seen the private sector, individuals coming together now to help the government procure these equipment and distributing them. Unfortunately, some of the politicians and key government staff have been involved in corruption. There have been abuse of some of the financial resources, and that has affected us. We are in a dire situation. We have lost 2 ministers. We have lost some of the principal secretaries in government. So it's a really difficult moment. And the COVID cases have hit us so much since January. up to now, the cases have been going up. We don't have capacity to test. So the figures that are there are not reliable ones. You cannot rely on them. So schools, students, we close schools, we start them, we open again, but we have students also getting, they are now becoming positive. And there is domestic abuse because some people are staying at home, more especially men, husbands, they're abusing their wives. And also we have a number of pregnancies are also going up. So these are some of the impacts of COVID, and people are helpless. And the fact that you have to bury your beloved ones without being there is also affecting us quite a lot, because as someone already mentioned, we are used to coming together. We are used to escort our relatives when they pass away properly, have a better burial ceremony for our relatives, but that's not happening. So it is really affecting us quite a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tony. Malawi is one of my favorite countries in the world, actually. I really enjoyed working there and being there when I was. It's very difficult, that one. There's a situation with the drugs, Tione, sounds horrendous, and then no capacity to test either. And Malawi is one of the poorest countries in the world, but it's a beautiful place and the people are absolutely fantastic. I'm so sad to hear how COVID is taking a grip with little opportunity to STEM test or anything. Can I now invite the drummer? We're going to take a short break. Can we invite the drummer who's here? Brian said he was here to fill the space during the break, and we will start back in about 10 minutes maybe.
Yeah, Rasta Sheba is here. We need that healing from Rasta Sheba. Thank you so much, Rasta Sheba.
Greetings. Can you hear me?
Greetings, Rasta. Yes, we can hear you. Thank you so much for coming and be with us.
Thanks. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of reasoning so far, so I should just let the drum talk for a while. I think everyone's kind of feeling the vibe right now, so I think I'll let the drums talk.
Yes.
I'll just say that we need to remember the roots of our traditional remedies of how we heal ourselves, and make sure that we're boosting our immune system, because historically these things that have plagued our communities attack our immune systems, and we have to rise above the culture of fear, because fear also breaks down our immune system. And I know it's not easy because of the situation, but you know, my own father passed in April of last year. They said it was COVID related, but it wasn't. It definitely wasn't. So we also have to ask, what is the benefit of doing stuff like that? So I'm not going to go into it too deep. I'm just going to say that we need to look a bit deeper in terms of what's going on, because the fall of a dead leaf is a warning to the green ones, and the insect that eats the leaf is under the leaf. So I'll leave it there. And what I want to do is play some drums for those who have come before us, for our loved ones who are in transition, for the health and prosperity of the living, and those who are yet to come. I would add that we've been doing this now. We hold a session every Sunday at 9 o'clock, which is broadcast on my Facebook page, which is a drum call for the ancestors. Ancestors who started 44 weeks ago this Sunday. And basically why it was started was because of these facts that we were not able to gather and pay our respects in the way that we would normally do. No 9 nights, none of the traditions that we could do that was all stopped. So we decided to do one every Sunday at our base, the village in Portobello Road, Ladbroke Grove, and keep it going in order to keep our connection with the ancestors alive, and for there to be a space where we could regularly come together and pay respects to those of our loved ones in transition. So every 9 o'clock on a Sunday, whether you're online or offline, no matter what you're doing or where you are, we can all take 1 minute to remember those who came before us and those loved ones who are in transition. So we just say spread the word, because it's a collective consciousness as well. For instance, if this internet went down, we'd still be able to do that. So we just want to develop that consciousness on the international level. And also remember, Sunday, 9 o'clock GMT, 1 minute for the ancestors and those in transition. And I'll leave it there simply. We do it every Sunday and we'll continue to do it, because when the lockdown started, the question became to be or not to be. Now, I'm going to play the drum first. I just want you to tell me what the level is like, because sometimes the sound is very bad. Is that too loud?
Good.
Is that okay?
It's good.
Not too loud?
Good.
Good?
It's good. Yes, it's good.
Okay, so we say respect to the ancestors, to the Most High, Mother, Father, Creator, Force of the universe. You know, we are moving into a new era in time. The universe is changing around us. This is also why we're seeing the things happening in society that's happening. So we call our ancestors for us to move forward into this new energy and to rebuild our community in the African diaspora back to its former greatness. And we can have no fear of the powers that were, because they're no longer the powers that be. Ibao, 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 Ibao. Is it still clear?
Yeah.
Iba means respect. Ibao, Ibao. My elder Baba Ade taught me that one. It's Yoruba. Iba. It's a song called a Juba, where we pay respect to those who came before us. Kama Juba Katoberi. This is the heartbeat of the night, Bingy. This is the rhythm we play a lot in the transition of our loved ones. These rhythms also give opportunity for people to join in with us when we pay our respects. I hear the words of the Rastaman say, Babylon, your throne gone down, gone down. Babylon, your throne gone down. I hear words of the higher man say, Babylon, your throne gone down, gone down. Babylon, your throne gone down. Fly away home to Zion, fly away home. Fly away home to Zion, fly away home. One bright morning when my work is over, I will fly away home. One bright morning when my work is over, I will fly away home. If I had the wings like a dove, if I had the wings like a dove, I would fly, fly away, fly away, and be at rest. Since I have no wings, since I have no wings, since I have no wings, I cannot fly, 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 fly. Since I have no wings, since I have no wings, since I have no wings, I'm gonna sing, 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 sing. If I had no wings like a dove, if I had no wings like a dove, I would fly, fly away, fly away, and be at rest. Last time, fly away, and be at rest.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yancy?
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Rasa Sheba. That was, I think that was just what we needed, a little bit of healing. People, just drop your shoulders. Just drop your shoulders and breathe. Inhale and exhale and breathe. Thank you so much, Rasa Sheba. Senge, are you there with us? Senge hails from the Cameroon, and for those who know, on a Friday evening, Yvonne mentioned it before, we do a 2 hour, well, it's supposed to be 2 hours, entertainment. It started, because of COVID actually, it started in April, just to keep our spirits up. There was a particular time when people were struggling with their mental health, and we just thought, what can we do? We would just do a Friday evening entertainment where musicians from all over the world pop in, as Yvonne said, poetry, and Senge is one of those musicians who has been entertaining us with her beautiful singing and her wonderful guitar playing. Senge, I invite you to tell us a bit about your experience with COVID and bereavement. You're still muted.
Okay. Hello.
Hello.
Everybody. Okay. I'm just so delighted to be with you all. And I'm very sorry. I think my Friday nights are a little bit more relaxed than what I'm here right now. Because talking about COVID-19, I'm very sorry. Oh my God. It is a very, very painful situation for me because I lost my mom due to, let me say so, this pandemic, June, the 6th of June last year. If I may talk a little bit about my mom. My mom, I don't know if you all get me clearly. I hope you can all hear me clearly. Yancy?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for the accent. My mom was a nurse, a renowned nurse in a small town in Cameroon called Tom. My mom had always dreamt to be a nurse. She never had the opportunity to go to school because she came from a very poor family. So she finally became a nurse because she wanted to save lives. She wanted to heal souls. My mom was the most devoted creature I'd ever seen. I'm very sorry being emotional. I'm so sorry. But I think I have to talk up. But since she died, I never did that. So she spent her whole life. She never had the time going to school at the age of 50. Yes, my mom went back to school, even wore a uniform and braided her hair as a little girl in the secondary school. She went back to the secondary school at the age of 50 just because she wanted to be a nurse. She told me she wanted to save lives. And she did so. She fought so hard, she became a nurse. She worked at the HIV center at Tombell Hospital. Being a nurse to my mom was every money we had went to all the sick people in the town called Tombell. Everybody was sick. My mom kept healing them without asking them money. When they came to the government hospital, my mom was always the one paying for their medications. My mom never paid for my school fees because she spent her whole time helping people out. I was first of all frustrated about that. See, when I got to see how rich she was, being who she was, But on the 6th of June, that same time, my mom was suffering from yeast. She had yeast. She had yeast, just common yeast. And she was all alone in the house. She called me days before because she was like, I'm bored at home. She just so loved her job that she never had time even spending with everyone. So she said she was bored at home and she's a little bit feverish. She just wants to spend time at work with her colleagues so she can have time to talk. And she went to the hospital, got her own self admitted because it was her hospital, thinking she could relax and rest. And she was being administered then medications that I won't go further. But we still have medical reports that prove she was suffering from this. But she got healed and she was about going back home when a colleague of hers asked us to permit him to give her the injection of vitamins. And she refused taking it. Like, she's a nurse, she doesn't know why she has to take vitamins. So, and he still insisted, and my mom was being injected. And immediately, she fell and died. Immediately, before we screamed out, the police were all over us, carrying us away. And before we thought of going out, we were told she was buried. And why was she buried? They said she suffered from COVID-19. We are talking of a COVID-19 right here. It's my point of view right here. COVID-19, finally, what are the symptoms? How can I put it? How can I actually ask this question? I know COVID-19 has a procedure that they give: wash your hands, take care, the symptoms like breathing problems, whatsoever, and whatsoever, coughing. My mom was as strong as no other person you can imagine when she was going home. And as happy as she was, like, I keep repeating that incident in my head, trying to put her. She was chatting and laughing with a friend when that guy injected her. And then in a split of a minute, she dies. And within an hour, everything happened in my life. My mom was being buried for COVID-19. Is someone suffering from COVID-19, moving, walking, breathing, laughing? And the hospital was not on quarantined. In that same town, in this same country. If I had to go further, I'm just asking a little question and it keeps going to my mind. That's when I heard this, I really want to understand. And I'm very happy with what Rastaman I cried when he played the drum because I realized, okay, he had this same experience, but I don't know how harsh his was, but he just actually just said, let's cross over, and I'm trying to cross over. But my mom, being the kind of lady she was, I have to carry some of her looks, some of her actions. She was a woman of the community. She was a woman who helped all the orphans. She was a woman who helped everybody, all the old, all the sick. So right now, I have to make sure I take over. I'm presently here. I'm trying to do up a beauty shop just to raise money to keep helping those same people. Because the community is damn too poor. Most of them can't provide medications. My mom's dead. Till now, Tombell community is not healed. They even make me cry. Like, the whole thing is so heartbreaking. Most are even sick. The same day, the lady she was taking care and the old lady she was keeping at our place died because she couldn't stand it. She couldn't stand it. What are we talking about? When we say COVID-19, I keep asking, I'm sorry to tell you, I'm very sorry. I'm just so horrible right now. But I think I need to be this horrible to raise eyebrows on what is going on. What is going on? Where are we taking this to? In that same community, everyone is scared right now going to the hospital. We're all scared going to the hospital because you don't know who are those actually defending you. Who are those who are actually your enemies? Who are those actually saying the truth and who are those actually lying? You see, with every report they gave, every detail about the report of my mom being COVID was all fake, from her name to her age and the hour she died and the day she died. And they say she died in 2021, whereas we were still in 2020. Every story about it. What is happening to us? Which kind of, what are we actually living for? Because in our community, we are all based. Should I actually say what I actually really think? I rather leave question marks for we all to answer. I rather don't say what I feel I think. I might be so wrong. I got so scared talking, so scared, because my same mom has always told me, before you talk, make sure you repeat what you have to say 50 times in your head. Keep repeating it and be sure it's clear. You know, keep repeating, because the more you repeat what you have to say, you'll be sure you're saying something accurate. And I've been repeating and repeating. And I was like, okay. As I heard Ras, I thank you, Ras, for that drum. I just said, okay, someone needs to say something. We are working on something. We need to give hope. But before giving hope, we need a solution. We need to fight on solutions. We're actually taking off peace. Like, I'm telling you, right now, I'm building a beauty salon, a shop on what I don't actually have, because I have to raise money to help a community. That was that lady's job, to give them hope again, to make them know they can actually buy medications, to make them know, because she was building a church at a small town called Etube village. I never knew my mom was doing all of these things till when we went on the service that we offered to her, and we met a crowd of people. Every group was saying what she was doing with facts. So we don't actually know what we do sometimes. I never knew taking away that soul was a huge, we don't know, it's a massive destruction. A massive destruction. I'm happy with the idea you get. I never loved singing on that day, but never did anyone know what I had in my heart, how heavy my heart was every time I was behind that guitar singing. And when I heard I was going to be on this conference, I was like, oh my, I really need to come out and I have to be healed. Because every blessed day I cry.
Thank you very much for sharing. We are all sending you love. We feel your pain. Thank you for using this platform to actually express your emotion. You have asked some incredibly important questions, and I hope we will not be able to answer all, but I think this conversation we have in this group is the first, because we know, and what we wanted to know is what are people experiencing across the world. And the follow-up is, how can we help? So thank you so much for sharing. I mean, you always bring love to us on a Friday. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
We feel your pain. Thank you so much. As I said, sorry we can't answer your questions, but we are mindful, and collectively we will come up with solutions to the bigger problem. Thank you. Thank you. And Ertanj is going to give us his personal experience as well.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm really sorry to hear all the heartbreaking stories people shared, and my condolences to you all for the loss of your loved ones. I am an Afro-Cypriot. I was born in Cyprus, but I've been living in the UK for the last 50 years or so. I've been doing some work in education. I retired a couple of years ago, but I'm still doing some freelance work from time to time for my old workplace, supporting supplementary schools. And in addition, I write a couple of columns in Turkish and English in the various publications, and I have a weekly show in Turkish and English on online television. Grief is universal, as we've been hearing. It has no boundaries, and however, COVID has seen to it that we have not been able to grieve, mourn in accordance to our customs and traditions. This has caused a lot of stress for all of us, for all communities. On a cold Saturday afternoon, on the 14th of November last year, I received a call from my nephew. He was crying, not being able to speak. His mom, my sister, had collapsed, and despite his and the paramedics' efforts, she died on the passage floor. We rushed there, but we were not able to go in the house. We were speaking to the paramedics, the ambulance people. There were three of them, three ambulances. None of them were wearing masks, by the way, but they were quite nice. My sister had been showing symptoms of COVID for a few weeks prior to that day. Her GP basically fobbed her off by sending her some antibiotics. And on the day, despite repeated calls to 111 and 999, a few hours before her death, her symptoms were not deemed to be urgent. They weren't warranted to needing urgent attention. So forgive me for not rushing to give unqualified support and gratitude to the NHS. I know a lot of dedicated staff work for the NHS, but I'm afraid it too is infected with racism and unconscious bias. In fact, I don't know whether bias can be unconscious. Judging by the huge number of BAME nurses and doctors who died of COVID, systemic racism is also seen in the health services in this country. I'm not a religious man. Generally speaking, we Turkish Cypriots are not particularly religious. But my sister was. She was a devout Muslim. She was hoping to go to Mecca on a pilgrimage later on in her life. She was 67. Whether religious or not, however, we hold on to our customs at times of death and at other important events. We share our grief. We grieve together, we mourn together as a community. A fact not very different from cultures of people here today. Immediately on hearing the sad news, families and loved ones of the deceased start congregating at the home of the deceased. On 3 consecutive days, immediately following the burial, we get together to pray for the deceased. We call it Mevlid. Prayers are told by the Hoja, who recites sections of the Quran. Food is shared. We reminisce about him or her. Burial should take place within 24 hours. or as soon as possible after death. This has not been possible during these very difficult times. We hear about long delays at the coroner's office, or due to a very large number of deaths, bodies have to wait at morgues. All these have added to our griefs. We were not able to fulfill the requirements of our customs. To me, one of the most haunting pictures of the pandemic was the picture which featured on the Reuters news report. It showed Hussein Hoja, the Imam, the Muslim religious figure, in front of a grave. It was raining and he had a white see-through umbrella, a forlorn figure trying to fulfill his duties with 5 of the family of the deceased. Hussein Hoja is a very good friend of mine. He tells me distressing stories of similar nature. Nearly 500 members of the Turkish Cypriot, Turkish and Kurdish communities died as a result of COVID. It's a huge number considering our numbers are not very significant in this country. 2 or 3 members of the same family perish within hours, days of each other. People were not able to say goodbye to their loved ones in hospital, sometimes because of the lack of communication in English. The sudden passing of my sister meant that I was not able to say goodbye to her. I spoke to her a day before. She told me she was not well. I feel guilty that I did not do enough to get her help. I can't help feeling that if I and the rest of her family did more, she would have been here with us today. To see the community pulling together has been a very positive thing. A lot of community organizations have pulled together and organized urgent help for people from the community, not just people from the community, but from all communities, which was really great to see. But I think the lady from America said that grief is not just about death of a loved one. As a touchy-feely community, not being able to embrace, hug each other has been a huge cause of distress for us. To finish, I'd like to read a few verses I wrote on the occasion of the birthday of my granddaughter. Oh, how I wish I could give you a hug if it wasn't for this horrible, horrible bug. I could hear you saying in your cheeky way, it's not a bug, Dede, it's a virus. Whatever, it's what separates us. One day soon, my darling, we'll embrace. Those horrible times will at least erase. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Ertanj. That was really heartfelt, and my condolences to you, your family, and to the wider Cypriot community, Afro-Cypriot community in the UK. What you're saying there really resonates because you said to the imam just carrying on with his job. And one day I rang the funeral directors to ask a question 4 hours after I was still on the phone, because they are struggling to, they're pushing through because they've got their jobs to do, but they are struggling through. So thank you so very much, Ertanj, and love to you and the family.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Anita from the US Virgin Islands. Now I'm going to show my ignorance here. I don't even know you had some COVID over there.
Well, thank you, Dr. Yancey and Yvonne Witter, for allowing me to participate in this gathering today on such a sober topic that is really impacting the world globally. I will tell you just a bit so that it can give some insight to what I'm going to share. I've lived and worked in the U.S. Virgin Islands for many, many years. a native North Carolinian, but I've done work in most states in the U.S. And during this season of COVID, I've had the opportunity to work with clients and individuals on a wide range of projects in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. And so in that, I've been able to compare what I've been seeing happening there to what's happening in the Virgin Islands. And as I was listening to all of the sharing from around the globe, one thing that has really resonated with me, in addition to the health disparities, the access to information and resources, is a critical thing that I think COVID-19 has really shined the light on. And that's when there are deficits in leadership in a place. And so whether, you know, the mindset of the leader, the mindset, whether it's servants leadership or not, and we're seeing this as it's playing out in the access to resources. And I say that as I share what the experience with COVID-19 has been here in the U.S. Virgin Islands. For those that you don't know, the U.S. Virgin Islands is just west of Puerto Rico. It's comprised of four islands. Actually, it's St. Thomas, St. Croix, St. John, and Water Island. The first case of COVID came to the Virgin Islands in March, and this was after initial cases started to pop up in the mainland, that there were no cases here. But as things would be, a gentleman and his wife went to Italy at the height of the pandemic there on a faith-based trip. And then when they came back, they went to church, and this started the spread of COVID here in the Virgin Islands. So that was around March 13th. But when I looked at the data as of yesterday, there's about 46,000 people that have been tested. There are about 2,600 that were active cases that tested positive. But the Virgin Islands has had in this last 15 months, well, no death and losing a loved one. So I hate to say just, but I think that you all will understand when I say that in comparison to, you know, the 4,000 and 5,000 a day in the US and other places, the Virgin Islands has had a total of 24 loss of life. So that to me, it speaks to leadership. And if you just compare what has happened on the mainland compared to the leadership mindset of the governor here and his team, it really speaks volumes. Now, while the Virgin Islands has a population of around 110,000, but still, it still goes back to mindset and leadership. And when I was listening to the snapshots from around the world, that kept resonating with me. The fact that so much of what occurs in a place really goes back, you know, to the leadership, the mindset of the leadership. So now when it comes to the Virgin Islands, much like Jamaica, the Virgin Islands is a tourist-based economy. So prior to the pandemic, on any given day, you could go to Charlotte, Mali, and there may be 10, 12 cruise ships there, because you don't need a passport to come here from the mainland. The traffic was always very heavy. Well, of course, with COVID-19, that had curtailed for a bit when the governor closed the island down in April and May. But I must say, throughout all of last year, some projects that I was working on, I was able to come to the Virgin Islands every month Yes, a test is required, to get access. But with the exception of those 2 months, the island has not totally shut down. But during those 2 months, there was restrictions on the hotels. And so being a tourist-based economy, much like Jamaica, in the absence of tourism, that really impacts the economy. One of the things that I have so noted that have really been impacted during the pandemic is education. For a time, the schools were closed, but they did reopen to virtual. They have provided laptops and access, and in some instances, Wi-Fi apparatus, so that the young people can access education. What has really demonstrated itself to be a challenge is those young people who don't do well in virtual spaces and who really need more interaction. Some of them have been falling a bit behind, and when you compare what's happening here to the mainland, it is felt that probably the majority of students in the mainland U.S. were socially promoted because they didn't have to think about it, and because of poor leadership out of Washington, things were in a disarray. And so there's hopes that will improve as the Biden administration takes hold and really show here again leadership. But education is continuing. The schools are proceeding. The governor has made an announcement that he's looking to see how he can open the schools fully, but that is still something left in the air. The other impact that COVID has had on the Virgin Islands is when it comes to employment. Prior to being a tourism-based economy, service, unfortunately, as we know, service jobs tend not to always pay the best. So here you would have many families who perhaps were somehow working in the customer service or service jobs where their wages were not that high to begin with. In the absence of tourism, and in the absence of all these cruise ships, many of the businesses have been closed for some time. What has also happened around employment is that many jobs have just totally, disappeared. There have been some loss of business, but as we all know, there's some inherent deficits in tourist-based economies anyway. When you look at a third impact of COVID-19 on the Virgin Islands, it has been truly from the economic standpoint in this loss of income from tourists and the tourist-based economy, but they have received CARES Act money from the federal government. So that has allowed them to maintain employment. So all during this, the COVID, no government employee has missed a paycheck. The governor has strategically looked to maximize the resources that he got out of the CARES Act. The Virgin Islands, as in the mainland US, all the families with incomes under 150,000 and the individuals under 75,000, they all got the first stimulus check, which was $1,200 for individuals and $2,400 for married couples. They also have started, I understand that the second check has yet to really been distributed here. In last report, last week, the money has come. And so they anticipate that they will get the second check, and that perhaps as President Biden is working, that they will get a third. The Virgin Islands and the government, they feel really elated because President Biden would frequent the Virgin Islands quite often, St. Croix, and so his connection and to not treat the U.S. Virgin Islands as like a stepchild as his predecessor did is a relief. What has also
flow, Dr. Anita, I'm really, really sorry to stop you in your flow, but I'm just really mindful of the time.
Yes, if I could just share one last thing.
1 minute.
Yes. There's one last thing that I want to share. Something has arisen here, which is now being labeled vaccine tourism. And what has happened is people from the mainland and really people from other races are flocking to the Virgin Islands because they don't need a passport. They can just come from the US, and it is much easier to get a vaccine here by simply going to the health department. And so there's this influx of people from other races that you never see in the Virgin Islands that are coming because it's easy to get the vaccine here because the cases are so low and vaccines are here. And so this vaccine tourism is something that is a bit odd, but they're seeing that occurring. And I just wanted to share that in closing. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so very much. All fascinating. I mean, we need another space because I would like to know more about that as well. You know, vaccine tourism, who knew? But thank you so very much. I hope when we invite you back that you will say yes to us so we can know some more. So thank you so very much. Maureen. So Maureen shared with us when we had the first session in October, November, I can't remember dates, all a blur. So we'd like to invite Maureen back.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone's contribution and the very emotional stories, experiences that so many of you have shared. It's, you know, often when I've closed off my video, it's because I've been wiping my nose and crying. So thank you. So I'm just going to share a little bit about my experiences. So, but I will put it into context. So I was that child, the one who tested and inquired. I always sought out knowledge and attempted to get some sort of equality in my household. I'm one of 10 children. I didn't realise then that I was actually a feminist. So no wonder I tested the status quo in my traditional Caribbean Pentecostal family. My parents used to say that I should have been a barrister because my tongue was really sharp and I was too quick and that it would cut me one day, but they failed to elaborate why I should have been a barrister. So what you don't know is that my parents both passed away last summer within 4 weeks of each other. They were together in love, they were together in life, and they were buried together. And this was actually not so uncommon because my mum worked nights, my dad worked on a building site when he was in employment, and in between jobs, he would follow mum to bed during the daytime. And my mum would say to my dad, Andy, why are you following me? Go and do something else. My dad was rushed to hospital. They were in a nursing home. My dad was rushed to hospital and because of his diabetes. And my mother followed a couple of weeks later. So they were together all the time. And unfortunately, because of some complications, my mother had stopped talking and she'd stopped eating. And my dad was, you know, they were sorting out his insulin and his diabetes. In June, May, April, by the time Mum was discharged to hospital, to our home, both of them were actually discharged to our family home, they had told us that my mother was end of life the day before she came to us, and that Daddy was also end of life. So we nursed them in my sister's home, and they had hospital beds. They were positioned as if you imagine the letter L, and we nursed them along with carers and support staff. My mother passed away first, And thankfully, my dad still had enough energy to help us through that very difficult time. We were able to lay hands on her. We were all there. We would sleep on the floor for that last week of her life, giving each other comfort as siblings and children and grandchildren. And because of this particular experience of this double grief, this loss that's very significant, I, proposed to Dr. Yancey to establish something called the kitchen table, where those who have experienced multiple loss can come together and share their experiences, not too dissimilar to the grief cafes and the other support systems that Belly has initiated for us. It's really important that people understand that this grief, these experiences during COVID times, and COVID-related deaths, which is, for my parents, they did have COVID when they were in the nursing home, but they did not have COVID when they left the hospital. So they went from the nursing home to the hospital, but their death was COVID-related. It's important that people have a space. This initiative that you've put on several times now, Dr. Yancey, and all of the other members, has been really impactful for myself, for my siblings, for friends who I have asked to join the space. It's healing, it's reassuring. There is hope, knowing that people are there to listen to us and to give really considered support, suggestions, and to know that there is another stronger arm behind this initiative. There's other therapists that we can go to. I'm really looking forward to being able to support other members of the community, wherever they are, in talking about multiple loss and multiple grief. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Maureen. Thank you so much. My condolences to you again on your... Thank you for the bravery, because you've seen outside of your grief for the community. So thank you. And thank you everyone here, because you've all done that. You've all seen outside of your own personal grief for community. So thank you. Anyone who would like to support Maureen in setting up her kitchen table talk, drop her a line in the chat or send me an email. This space is about us making things happen. So let's do it. Thanks for that initiative, Maureen. It will happen by any means necessary, because we've got some powerful people in the space who've all been impacted. So thank you again. And I will hand over now to Clancy, and Clancy will introduce herself.
Greetings, thank you, Dr. Yancey. Can everybody hear me? Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm kind of sitting in a bit of a, in a bit of a space of being quite overwhelmed, actually, by, I think you mentioned the word, Yancey, by the bravery of people. I'm a drama psychotherapist by trade. That's my day job. And kind of grief and trauma is my bread and butter, I guess. But there's something about this particular time and space in relation to what we are actually dealing with that is very, very different to the loss and trauma that I'm used to working with. Not least to say about my own very close experiences with bereavement in relation to loved ones and COVID, but just how I don't think I know anybody actually who is not being impacted by this. And so when they talk about long COVID in relation to people who have actually had COVID and the effects of it, I want to ask the question, what about long COVID in relation to our psychological well-being and the impact of COVID long into the future for us? So we definitely have got some work that we need to do. But again, just and I will come back to do some summing up a little bit later on. But at the moment, I want to continue to allow the speakers their time as we are coming towards the final part of our time together. So I'm going to ask BK Wasime, hope I pronounced that correctly, to unmute, introduce herself, and then to share with us in the gathering. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Clancy, and thank you to everybody who has shared today. It's been incredibly powerful, incredibly painful, but also there is some power in that pain when we're all together. So Yvonne, thank you for inviting me, and thank you to Dr. Yancey and to everybody else who's here today. I come to this platform wearing different hats like a lot of people here. So professionally, I've worked in education. I'm also a coach, and I also lost somebody during the pandemic in April 2020. I think that anybody who's working with people at this period we're working on so many different levels, both managing our own trauma and pain and supporting what people are going through. One of the things that has struck me throughout this whole period has been the way in which the media has been used to cause confusion. And I feel that there's been a lot of confusing messages that have been around, and that confusion has caused anxiety and fear. And there are so many people who are just not sure what's going on. And so when you add that to losing someone, or you know someone who's lost someone that you also knew, there are so many layers of things that are going on that people are trying to manage each day, each moment. And my own situation, when Maureen talked about her mom and dad contracting COVID in the hospital and then coming home, I thought of my own sister who had an asthma attack, and we have asthma in my family, and she had not had an asthma attack for 18 years. And the doctors had said they were not willing to see her. She would have to go to hospital. And somebody said earlier about I think it may have been Ertans. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. I think you spoke about the confusion in the hospitals. And when my sister was admitted to hospital, there seemed to be, you know, the people who work in hospitals were also experiencing anxiety and confusion. And I think in years to come, we will find out that a lot of mistakes were made because, you know, my sister was admitted to hospital following an asthma attack. Within a short period of time, a week, we were told that she had pneumonia and that she was going to be placed on a ventilator. And within another 2 weeks, within that 2 weeks, we were told we couldn't visit her. The only person who could visit was her daughter. And then we received a call to say that she had died. And my head is still in the place of, okay, she had an asthma attack. You don't have an asthma attack and die. You go to hospital and you come home. And so we weren't able to see the body. We weren't able to dress the body. And the RAS who was drumming talked about our traditions. And so many people have been denied the opportunity to have those precious last moments, those traditions which we hold so dearly, which help us to accept the transition from life to death, have been denied. And so the day is what's going on. What I think it was Senge asked, what exactly is COVID? Yeah. People wear masks, some people don't, some people contract it, other people don't. Underlying health issues is such a broad term. People have underlying health issues and they don't contract COVID. And then my sister was 66 and the government had made a very clear statement that people over 60 were not priority. Yeah, they were not priorities. Their lives and their bodies and what they have to contribute to society was not a priority. And so, all of that is part of the level of healing and grief that I am having to deal with, that other people like myself are having to deal with, because they let us know that if you were over 60, you were not a priority. They let us know that if you went into hospital, you might not come out. And then you start to wonder how much of this is planned, how much of this is real, how much of this is constructed. And with all of that, you're still dealing with pain because my sister's not here anymore. And, a year before, I lost my nephew to knife crime. He was 39 and went to a store and somebody asked him for a cigarette and they ended up in a tussle and his throat was cut. And so our family's dealing with grief in a way that we've never had to deal with it. And this time, Clancy, you said this time is like no other. It really is. It really is, because the layers of things and the way in which our daily lives are changing every day, and the liberties that are being taken away from us, the human rights, is this correct? Is this lawful? Is this legal? What is going on? And dealing with grief in that whole picture as well. So it's not easy. It's not easy. And yeah, I feel very blessed to be here today with others and their experiences. It's not easy though. It's not easy.
Thank you, beloved, for sharing with us. And as you say, there's something about if you're dealing with one thing, it's bad and not so bad. But when you're dealing with multiple issues and the support systems that would ordinarily be around us to hold us are denied us, then the impact of that is severe. And I don't think that the globe has really understood the impact. We're born into a sense of attachment. That's what we're born to do, is to attach. And now we're being asked to not touch one another, not be in the same spaces together. That's a big psychological and emotional ask for us as human beings, particularly when that is supposed to come so naturally to us. Michelle, would you be kind enough to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and share with us in our gathering? And then BK, I give thanks to your honesty with us just at this moment in time. Thank you.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters, everyone. Yvonne, thank you for inviting me or informing me about today's session. I feel as though I've been on a ride at Alton Towers and it's not going to stop. One of those big rides. where you go down and your belly just stays up there. That's how I feel. But at the same time, I appreciate everyone for sharing their stories. I've cried. So I'll put my story a bit into context. In 2019, my father passed away. My parents live, my mother lives now in Florida. And I was going back and forth until one day, when my dad was taken into hospital, I FaceTimed with my brother, my dad, my mum, and he did not look like my dad. I said, Dad, do you want me to come? He said, yes. I was on the next plane. And over the course of from January to March 20th, he took really ill. And in the end, the last 2 weeks, he said he wanted to be at home. So we knew he was getting ready to transition, to die. And we had the opportunity to be there. I was there with him for the 2 weeks. My husband came and supported us. My mum is elderly, so some of the things that had to happen with my dad, she was not able to do. But we were there, and we were there to help him, to help my mum, and to see him transition in the best way possible. And then, of course, we had our 9-night events. We organized the funeral, and there's a lot of, for me, there was a lot of healing that came with organizing the funeral and making decisions about how my dad would be dressed, what is he going to look like. All those things were part of the healing for us. Then I came back to the UK. I had been speaking to my, I call him my brother cousin because my brothers don't live here, but my male cousins are here and they help, they support me. Saying, okay, we're gonna go up to Bradford and see your mom and dad. So that was the January. Then the country announced the lockdown, I think on the 20th of March. And on the 30th of March, I got a text saying Patrick is dead. I thought I'd misread the text. I said, no, I could not have read that right. I gave it to my husband. I said, read that, what does it say? He said, Patrick has passed. I couldn't believe it, the shock of the suddenness. How come? I just spoke to him. Then I spoke to his daughter. He said, Dad went into hospital on the 28th, complaining that he wasn't breathing right. On the evening of the 29th, he texted and said he felt a bit better. Everybody wasn't to worry. And on the 30th, he was dead. And the shock reverberated, of course, around the family. His wife is she's still in a bad place, a very bad place. And it's difficult for us now. We don't know how to help her. So being here has helped me to see that there are things happening that we can say, Dawn, how do you feel about attending this or going here to help you with the grief? Because, you know, you've made plans with your husband for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And then all of a sudden, he's not there. And that is one of the cruelties, I think, of COVID, is you don't have, it doesn't give you that time to be close. It doesn't give you the time to think. It doesn't give you time to dismantle your plans. And it's a cruel disease. And we're all still trying to come to terms with the loss of Patrick, a beautiful man. And I am a Christian, and I find myself sometimes questioning why. I don't know why. I'm gonna say I saw a video a few years ago about this guy is a comedian dressed up like a woman and was complaining that God has taken his favorite singer, his favorite boxer. So God, I love Trump. Trump is my man. When are you gonna take him? But for many here today, I would suspect that these people, like saying my heart was there because it's like someone has so much still to do. And you just can't get your head around it. And I know Dawn is suffering terribly. Although we're a big family, sometimes that grief, the grief that she has, you know, I see her body cannot contain it.
Yeah.
And even the space outside of her body cannot contain it. So that was what I wanted to share, really, with everybody. So thank you for giving me the space and the opportunity to talk and share. And I love Maureen's idea of the kitchen table.
Thank you.
And BAMEStream, I'm going to put Dawn in touch with BAMEStream because she needs it.
Yeah.
She needs it.
Thank you. Michelle, thank you so much. Thank you. Is it possible, I don't know if, is it possible to put the screen back to gallery? Is that something I'm not doing, or can we have the screen back on gallery? Just for a moment, please.
You need to click the right hand corner of your screen.
Oh, okay.
Where it says view, click on view. Right hand corner of your laptop.
Got you. Thank you kindly. Okay.
Put it on gallery.
Thank you. You know, it's quite easy. It's quite, it's not easy to kind of summarize where we are at this moment. But what I do know is we're still in a safe space. We're still here with one another. And there was something that was shared earlier about something that I think we need to give consideration to, is that if it is true that this pandemic affects more elders than it does younger people, then we've lost a lot of wisdom. We have lost a lot of wisdom. And I wonder, are we as the next generation down, are we prepared for this? Have we been preparing ourselves to step up into this next place that we are going to be called to lead from the front? Every painful experience here, and I can't even begin to think about what the weight of that is. But even in that pain, here is the acronym that has come to me, is HOPE. And that hope is helping our people to emerge. We have to emerge out of this. We have to emerge out of this. We have to go back to those cultural beliefs, wisdoms, and practices that have taken our ancestors from before, who know what it is to be in pain, in order for us to be able to move forward. This is not about a religious belief. This is about recognizing that we have wisdoms and practices that we can hold on to, that will enable us to lead from the front. This is the opportunity now where we have to lead from the front. Families have been left without their main breadwinners. And I am working with children who have found themselves in a care system that they were not prepared for, because there isn't an auntie, there isn't an uncle, there isn't an extended family to put them in. And those care systems are hostile, and these babies are in there. We have to lead from the front. Every single soul here that has shared, to one degree or another, needs us to be able to appreciate the multi-layers of loss and grief that they're experiencing. We get told that there are how many millions of people, now I wrote it down somewhere, that have died from COVID. Is it 2.5, something like that? Okay, that's those who've transitioned, but each of those belong to a family. Each of those have got brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, nieces, nephews, children. The list, the numbers just increase the more we sit and think about it. We have to lead from the front. There is never going to be too much support for our people. So if you have an idea and you have a kitchen table, or you have a BAMEStream, or we have, I'm the secretary for the Association of Black Psychologists. We have healing circles that operate through the week. There's never going to be too much service for our people to overcome, but we have to lead from the front. There are systems that are set against us, even within this pandemic phase. And those systems are harsh, and they've treated us harshly, even the ones that were supposed to support and care for us. But we have to lead from the front. So Dr. Yancey and Yvonne, I'm truly thankful that you have put this on, that you equally have set aside your own pain to come and lead from the front with us. Niles, beloved, what you did for us in that break enabled us to begin to raise that vibration in order for us to be able to lead from the front. Sometimes when we don't have words, what we have is the drum. And when our ancestors needed to call and send messages, they used that very drum. So if you don't have a drum, get one. Because when you don't have the words, let the drum, as Brother Niall said, do the talking. As I give thanks for every soul here, and I ask Brother Niles to lead us in our closing. Thank you.
Thank you. Greetings, family, in these challenging times. Yeah, it's a lot to deal with, and it's a very emotional and sensitive subject. Sound moves matter. Word sound power is a metaphysical reality. If I hit the drum, the sound that comes out of it moves matter. We are part of that matter. So there's so much that we can do ourselves when we remember who we are. So we have to get back to our core of our African center, of those things that we've had that have got us thus far, you know? And this is why we do what we do and keep it alive, you know? It's a risk, and it has been a risk. We've done it at times where you know, the regulations didn't necessarily allow us to do what we're doing. The ancestors came before us. Our hands were cut off for playing these drums during our resistance. So who am I now in this time? The question is to be or not to be. Are we going to be ourselves, or are we just going to become sheep and follow whatever Simon says? So I'm saying we have to reach deep inside at this time. We have to stand in our power. of the legacy of those who came before us. We need to draw for those tools, Sankofa principle. And like you were saying, we have to lead, we have to move forward, we have to lead, and we have to be responsible to our people. So we have to actually make sure that we're being, you know, straightforward about what's actually going on in this great reset, as they call it. I think we need to look into that whole reasoning that's coming and start to look at what's really going on, because the last thing I'd say on that is that we hear people saying, when is it going to go back to normal? What was going on before normal? We were fighting already because it was unacceptable. So we don't want to go back to that. We want to go forward to something better. And that's where we have to be fearless, because we're living in a historical time where this world is not going to be back to what we saw as normal. And we have to be diligent enough and confident enough and know ourselves enough to put something else in its place. You know, the universe, as I said before, is changing. This is what this great reset is talking about. But we have to remember that, like, the system don't control the universe. The universe is the universe. And if it's changing, it's changing. And there's nothing that anybody in the physical can do to change that reality. So as that old paradigm dies, a new one must come in its place. So let us not get distracted by what they're doing. This has been 500 years. We are not the worst affected by COVID. We are the worst affected by white supremacy and institutional racism. And whether it be COVID-19 or Brexit or whatever that issue is that affects society, we always get the brunt of it. And that's the bottom line of it, you know? We have to never forget that we've been prisoners of war for 500 years and we're still there, and we still need to be vigilant and fight for our rights. We can't forget these things, and, you know, have our own mind. Let's think for ourselves. Let's look for ourselves again. Let's go back to our core and actually look at these things as what's actually going on and move forward. Because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, what's being put forward is all leading to one thing, the great reset. So what is that reset going to be? Are we resetting it, or are the system resetting it? Ashe. So I think what I'll do coming out is, let's just join in something collectively. I'll play the drum, but I'm thinking of something that we all know right across this global diaspora would be that Pan-African anthem that Bob Marley, it was actually Curtis Mayfield who originally wrote this song, but it was taken up by Bob Marley and made into a song called One Love. So I'm going to sing this song now. Join in wherever you are, feel the vibe, listen to the words carefully, because a lot of people just sing One Love like it's some happy-go-lucky tune. If you listen to the words, it's very prophetic and it's very, very relevant to what's going on now, because that's what happens with our culture. If it's strong and if it's real, it will only just become more powerful. And as artists, especially, a message I'll send out to all other artists is that it's our responsibility to talk the truth. This is why we've been given the gift that we've been given. And although it's challenging times and it's dangerous, we still have to have the fear, we still have to have the courage to stand up and tell the truth. So. One love, one heart, let's get together and feel alright. One love, one heart, give thanks and praise to the Lord, and I will feel alright. Let's get together and feel alright. Let them out pass all their dirty remarks. There is one question I'd really love to ask. Is there a place for the hopeless sinner who would hurt all mankind just to save his own? One love, one heart. Let's get together and feel alright. One love, one heart. Give thanks and praise to the Lord, and I will feel alright. Let's get together and feel alright. Hey, let's come together to fight this holy Armageddon. So when the man comes, there will be no more doom. Have pity on those whose chances grow thinner, cause there ain't no hiding place from the Father of creation. Sing it out. One love, one heart. Let's get together and feel alright. One love, one heart. Give thanks and praise to the Lord, and I will feel alright. Say it. Let's get together and feel alright. Give thanks and praise to the Lord, and I will feel alright. Let's get together and feel alright. Jah Rastafari.
Ashe, beloved, thank you kindly as I hand back over to Dr. Yancey and to Yvonne. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Russ. That was very uplifting. You see, when we started out today at 2 o'clock, well, actually before 2 even, many people had taken the opportunity to sign in earlier so we could get familiar. So it was a good 15 to 20 minutes before 2 we were assembled, most of us. And people were asking, well, how long is it going to go for? And I said, I have no idea. We can't prescribe a time to this. It's exactly 3 hours, just over 3 hours since we've been together. So we are now coming to the close of the event. I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to come and share so honestly and openly. It has been an incredible space. I'm kind of speechless, so I'm going to turn over to Dr. Yancey, who will have some more words. Thank you. It's the best I can do at the minute.
Thank you, everyone, for the confidence in us, in feeling safe in this space, collective space. It emerged. We had no idea what it would turn out to be, but all I knew is that I wanted something to happen. And for something to happen, you need to find out the why and the how. And this was why I wanted this space. So it will inform whatever needs to happen next. You know, that old adage, if someone gives you a massive plate of food, you don't put your face in it and start groveling, you go spoonful at a time. And in this space was me arming myself with the cutlery and saying, folks, come help me eat this. So we're in this space together. I thank you. What I want to say, it's been heavy, it's been emotional. I think every one of us has shed a tear or two or more. Look after yourselves, do whatever you need to do to stay safe and well today and beyond. Whether it means putting on some nice music now and dancing like no one's watching, you know, soaking in that bath, journaling, whatever it takes, know that today has been heavy. You need to pay attention to yourselves, please. Thank you so very much. There's going to be follow-up because, you know, we're not going to leave people hanging. My question that I'm going away with is, what next and who? We've seen that across the diaspora, we all been impacted. We're not able to do what our traditional way, as Ross rightly, said. We need to do that reset. but we need to do the reset. We can't look for someone else to reset first. So we are a community, we are a collective, whether it's to attend Maureen's kitchen table, whether it's to start your own kitchen table, whatever it is, send all ideas. Nothing is silly, everything welcome. Our Friday evening gigs, it was meant to be 4 weeks, started in April. We're in 2021, it's still happening. Just creating spaces that are safe so we can speak and come together. Talk, journal, sing, dance, soak in the bath, drink your drink, whatever you got to do, please, please be safe. This evening particularly, it's been heavy. Much love to everyone and my condolences to everyone. Yvonne, I hand back to you.
Yes, Nicole, who's been helping us host, has just had news that her nan passed. I'd love to have ended on a higher note, but
we are sending you lots of love.
Sending you lots of love, Nicole.
Yes, and please, www.BAMEstream.org, free sessions for anyone that needs support. There's lots of other services out there.
Yes.
Please, please, please use the services. If you don't feel able to use the services, drop me a text, you know, and I'll try and signpost Clancy, any one of us, just
anyone.
And here what I'm gonna ask. Contact one person, someone else, and just say, how are you? It helps. It really does help. Thank you, everyone.
I've posted some links to Patagift groups in the chat, the healing circles, because I've attended some and they're absolutely brilliant. There's so much out there. There's so much out there. Yancey's doing so much. There's so many. BAMEstream has a lot. They've just got the BAMEstream website. There's so many links. So Nicole, our condolences to you if you're still in here, and don't worry about anything. We've reached the end now, so Yancy and I will take it from here. Please don't worry. You do what you need to do, family-wise, and thank you so much for your support today.
And can I quickly say
yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much indeed. I haven't really spoken like this since my sister died. And thank you, Yancy, thank you, Yvonne, for giving me this opportunity. And I'll definitely contact BAMEstream and get some advice, some counseling. Thanks very much indeed.
Excellent. Paul, did you want to say anything, Paul? I know you've been there quite quiet, observing. Black gifted, okay. Niles, anybody? Any last words from anybody?
Yvonne, can I just say that part of the healing circle, at the moment, we have 4 healing circles that run, but we are due to launch the men's healing circle.
Ooh.
Because I think where we women kind of are more open to naturally coming together, it's not so for our guys. So, you know, we really want to encourage people to just look out in the next couple of weeks for the men's healing circle. And that one's a multi-generational healing space. So it's going to be held by an elder and a younger. And that's specifically going to be for men. So in the next couple of weeks, that's going to be coming out. So please look out for that.
That's good. I must say the women's healing circles are good. So I'm sure the men's one will be equally helpful.
And please pop over to Niles's Facebook page on Sunday morning for some of that beautiful.
Yes, I've kept the link already. I can't wait.
Thank you.
Was it 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. for the drumming, Niles?
Yeah, all the voices just froze for a minute. I've just come back. That's what I was going to say. 9 p.m. PMT every Sunday. We broadcast live on my Facebook page, Ras Ashaba. But it's not really just about that. It's about us holding that collective consciousness. So you don't have to go online. You just need to spread the word to the African family that at 9 o'clock we collectively and globally pay respect to our ancestors for 1 minute. Not just our ancestors, but we take a thought for those of our loved ones in transition, for the health and prosperity of the living and those who've yet to come. So spread the word, let everyone know right across from all continents, right across the globe, the African diaspora.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony, thank you from Malawi, all the way from Malawi. Thank everybody from far-flung places. And Becky is still away. Dr. Anita, Sophia. Yeah, I appreciate the fact that you're in different time zones. And yeah, we really appreciate your presence here, all the people from different continents and places.
Thank you. Be well, everyone.
Be well. Take care. Bye-bye.